In the last chapter, we took a look at the basic types that are used in PHP. And now we're going to move on to the ways that we can control the programming as it happens in our code. And the first of those is going to be logical operators, also called if statements or even if-then statements. Sometimes even you'll hear them called if-else statements. The idea here is that if an expression is true, then execute a statement. And this is the format that it's going to take when we use it in PHP. If, open parentheses, an expression, which is going to be a Boolean expression, and we talked about Booleans, whether it's going to evaluate to true or false. So if it's true, do this. If it's false, then it's going to do nothing. And we're going to close the parentheses, and then on a new line, we'll have the statement with its semicolon after it. Now, an example of that might be something like, if variable A is greater than variable B, then echo back A is larger than B. And that makes a lot of sense. Now, there's another format to this. If you have more than one line of code that you want to execute as a statement, you'll want to use curly braces around it. So you can see I've done that here. We've got the open curly brace and the closing curly brace that let us know that everything that's inside those braces should be executed if A is greater than B. Now, that's going to be required if we're going to be dealing with multi-line statements, but I also think it's a really good idea even for single-line statements. Just always get in the habit of doing it, and then you'll be able to rely on them to tell you what belongs to the if statement and what doesn't. Now, echo A is larger than B could actually be up on the same line. There could be a line return before the curly brace. You'll see some people do it that way so that the opening curly brace is on a new line. Remember, white space isn't significant in PHP, so it's not a big deal. We can format it in whatever way makes sense. I like this format because that way I can see that I have an if statement and I can see where the if statement ends. I know that the if statement is always going to be a line that starts the braces, and I can then look for the first instance where we close it. And I always indent it to match so that I'll be able to quickly scroll down and see blocks of code. So let's go ahead and try using this exact code in a new window. So let's go ahead and go into our sandbox alias that we created earlier. You see I've got a number of files that I created in the last chapter. One of the files that I created was the basic.html. And I'm going to open that up. It's just got some basic HTML in it that I can reuse. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a save as on that file with something that I'm just going to call logical, because these are logical expressions that we're working with. And instead of .htm, the suffix is going to need to be .php, and I'll save it in my sandbox. There we go. Now we have a place where we can work with our logical expressions. So let's try that exact statement that we were talking about just then. I've set two variables for variables here. One is A equal to 3. Second is B equal to 4. And if A is larger than B, it will echo back A is larger than B. So I'll save it. And we'll go into Firefox. And I'm going to load up that page. Remember, that's going to be http://localhost if you're on Windows, and that'll take you straight there. If you're on Mac, then you're also going to want to have tilde and your username. And then PHP sandbox to get into the folder we created, and finally logical.php. So it loaded up the page, and you may first think that it didn't actually succeed, but if we in fact view our source, you'll see that the page did load, but there's nothing in there at all. We have a page title, logical expression, so we know we got the page. But the thing is that A was not larger than B, so it didn't execute. If we swap these two values, though, and say that that's 4, and this one's going to be 3, and save it, reload the page, now we'll get A is larger than B. So the code executes if it's true. If not, it doesn't. And it's that simple. And that's how logical expressions work. Now, the test expression, the A is greater than B portion of that, is always going to need to evaluate to a Boolean true or false. And as we saw when we were talking about type switching, it's going to do its best to switch the type to either be true or false if we don't come up with something that automatically equals true or false. Statements like greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to, those are always going to be Boolean expressions. And we can test if something is exactly equal by having two equal signs. And that way it knows that we don't want to assign the value of B to A. We just want to compare it. I think of it a lot of times as being a scale, and we have two sides of the scale there that we're weighing against each other. So A weighed against B, are they the same? Be careful that you don't use the equals sign because that will succeed. This will execute, but it will actually assign the value of b to a. So we want to be careful. If we're talking about equals, we're always using the double equals. And then finally, there's one more that you need to know about, which is the not equals. The exclamation point is going to become very familiar to you, very common, that when we want to talk about the negative of something, we just prefix it with the exclamation point. So A is not equal to B, then it's going to answer back A is larger than B. And we can test all of those expressions, play around with a little bit, plug in some different values. We could, of course, have something that simply says, if A is greater than B, do this. And then we could have another if statement right below it that says, if A is less than B, then answer A is not larger than B, right? And it would execute one in one case and one in the other case. But because we do both of these so often, and it's going to be really common that we want to do one thing in one case and another thing in another case, there's actually a better way that we can do this, and we'll see that in the very next movie.